Hello and welcome to Consciously Awesome Live here on Solivity TV. I am your host, Sheila Applegate, and I have dedicated my life to living from a space of conscious oneness on earth, integrating my higher levels of consciousness and communication with the non-physical into my daily life so that I can find joy and wonder in relationships and my work and nature, everything I do, even the littlest moments, even the angry and the sad moments. And the reason that I wanted to start Consciously Awesome Live is because I've always had a passion of sharing this with others and wanting to help other people who are interested to connect with the divine and bring that into their life more fully for the opportunity to live in the flow and to experience the wonder of life in every moment. So that's what this is about. Today is going to be a show that was not expected and yet divinely planned and expected. So today we were supposed to have my dear friend Sandra Fish, who many of you may know from Sense8. She played the bad mom. She played Nomi's mom. And she's a beautiful soul. But she was scheduled to be on the show with us today. And we were going to talk about always choosing love over fear. She will be here in a couple of weeks. But what happened is last week she contacted me and she said, Sheila, you're not going to believe this, but I was meant to have a vaccine today and they canceled my appointment because, well, they didn't say why they canceled. Oh, well, because they didn't have the supplies. And I had known from, watching the news and what was going on in the country with the snowstorm that some of the supply had not been able to be transported. So I was like, well, that's interesting. And she said, if it falls on the show, I have to go to the vaccine. I am so sorry. And I was like, okay, but I was thinking, what are the chances that they're going to reschedule it next week on Wednesday when we're going live for a show? So guess what? They scheduled it for today. And when she let me know that a couple of days ago, I thought, what am I doing with this show? And do I want to, how do I want to spend our time with you this week? And my heart knew all along, I think, but I was resisting it because it feels vulnerable. And so knowing the synchronicities and always realizing that when things like that happen, it's time to tune in and notice what's going on. And with that in mind, I did that. I just sort of sat with it and thought, what are we meant to do? And it kept coming back to the same thing. I want to talk about grief during COVID. And I've really wanted to talk about this to all of you, to the world, to share my experience with people and to help guide people through this time. But I've been afraid. And I'm afraid because I'm going to share with you the personal story. And as you can see, I'm probably going to cry. So I've made a decision that this is important, this is meant to be, and this is guided by the divine. And my heart wants it so bad, and I don't mind when other people cry. So I'm going to give myself permission to cry in front of all of you if that's what needs to happen, because I want you to, it's just one story. And it's not everyone's, but I think there's going to be value in it for everyone. And then I'm going to move from my story on to maybe some things that are more collective, how we can help each other and what we're experiencing collectively with grief as we move through this year and the pandemic. Okay, so let's start with my story. Gotta get a little further into this before I started this, but I will once I get through this. Okay, so my mom died of COVID in November, and it was a beautiful experience, and it was difficult. And I know that there's millions of people around the world who are going through this. And that's why I want to share. And also, I know so many people who have lost their parents or siblings or friends or loved ones, some through COVID and through other tragedies or natural death during this time. And it's different during this time. I lost my dad, died just over a year ago. And of course, that was difficult too. We were with him, but grieving was different because people were around and they were hugging and our family was together and my kids could come home. And that didn't happen this time. So I think about all the millions of families who around the world are experiencing this. And then the people who maybe could be with their loved one or they weren't, but when they died, because maybe it wasn't COVID, but they haven't probably been with friends. Some may have had services, some may not, but it's different, right? We all know the world is different right now. I did get tissues, I should use them. Okay. So, all right, there we go. Now, here's my story with my mom and how that went down. So, my mom was in the late stages of dementia and she was in a nursing home. And my dad had just died of Alzheimer's in the same nursing home. So we were very close to the people at the nursing home and the residents and the staff. And last March, I was scheduled to go to California to work and play, see Sandra. And just that was in March, and that's when everything shut down. But in the last week of February last year was the last time I saw my mom. And I had a beautiful weekend. I spent I spent Saturday with her at her residential space, and my sister Doreen, I have two sisters, and we visited my mom there, and we had a beautiful time. My mom had lost her ability to walk and to talk, but she could still communicate really well. Everybody loved her. Everybody loved her there. She was so giving and loving. And even the people who didn't meet her until after she couldn't talk, they fell in love with her because she had this way of communicating and just loving people so much. So on the next day, on Sunday, my other sister, Julie, was here from out of town, and we were able to bring my mom out for the day to my house. And this was not something that was happening very often. It was very special that she was doing well enough that we could bring her to my house, and we had lunch, and I made the lunch she used to make us as kids. And we laughed so hard. We laughed together until our bellies hurt. And on the way back, when I was driving her back to her place, it was, we were alone. And I was talking to her about the way she would spend her time on both sides of the veil, basically, that I knew she could connect with my dad still, and but she still knows what I did. And then after a little while, and again, remember, she's acknowledging me with dementia and without language anymore, or verbal ability to talk. She could still understand it. So after a little bit of kind of talking about it, I'm like, well, wait, who am I kidding? I can do that too. And I can do that too, because that's what I do, right? As I communicate with both sides. And I was telling her, I feel you coming to me. And she wasn't getting the words that I was talking about then. And then I said, meditation. When you meditate and you visit us in meditation, and she lit up and she acknowledged that that's what she was doing, that she was communicating and visiting us and the people on the other side through what she called meditation. And because that was her words when she could talk. So it was a really special moment, and it was affirming. And there was a part of me that really did think that that was the last day that I would be with her, because over the years I had always imagined that I could see myself with my dad at the end. And we were all right there with him, holding him, but I could never picture myself with my mom. So at the end of her life. And so I assumed that that meant she was either going to die in her sleep, or I was going to be traveling at the time, because those were the only two things I could imagine that would keep me away. And so in a way, I said goodbye. I was prepared for that to be the last day. But then over the next few days, everything erupted, and New York was hit with COVID, and we had to cancel the plane, the trip, and my mom's residential space went in lockdown, I guess. Like, we weren't allowed to visit. And at that point, I was like, okay. But I thought, well, we're talking a couple of weeks, right? Not a year. It wasn't quite a year before she died. So over time, I was like, okay, well, this is what's happening now. We were able to speak with her over video chat. She couldn't speak to us, and we were watching her decline. And the staff was working so hard for everyone and being so great to the residents. And eventually they worked out for us to see them through windows, big, thick windows. And we would talk on the phone, and we could see them a few feet away. And we did that several times with her. She didn't quite understand why we were out, especially if it was raining, or why we were outside and not coming in. But we were able to do that. And we even made it to her 80th birthday, which we celebrated through a window with her. And then a couple weeks later, maybe not even a couple weeks, maybe a week or two later, we got a call that she was not eating, and she was sleeping a lot, and her personality, or she just wasn't the same. Something was wrong. And she was on comfort care at that point, so there wasn't a lot of intrusive checking. They did find out she had a bladder infection, and so they were able to treat her for that. And then the symptoms, she stopped eating. I think she kind of rallied for a day or two, and then she stopped eating again, and she was sleeping all the time. And they were testing people twice a week, at least, at that point there. The residents, I think the staff were getting tested even more. And she was testing negative for COVID. So they figured it was the end of the life, and her doctor called and talked to me about it. And at that point, they explained to me that we were able to come and be with her at the end of life, and that we hadn't gotten confirmed until that moment. And so there was this joy, not that she was going to cross, but that if she did, we would be able to be there with her. And then it was only a few days later that I got a call at 10 o'clock at night from them. And that's never good when they call that late at night. So I answered the phone, and I guess I was thinking at that point that I would be told that she was declining and that we were going to set up to go in and see her. But instead I got the call that she had COVID. And I just started crying because I knew she wasn't going to make it through, and any hope of seeing her again was gone. And I felt so bad for the staff member who was calling and telling me this, because she had to call I don't know how many. My mom was the first on the floor, so I don't know how many she had to call at that point, but she would go on to having to call a lot of families to tell them this. And my vanity is like making me see my face and saying, do I want to do this? All right, back to this. So she, deep breath. So I cried hysterically on the call because I knew at that point, I was sure at that point that that was going to be the end and that I wouldn't be able to see her. And then I called my siblings, and I guess I think we posted it on Facebook, and that's how my cousin knew. My second cousin said that she her good friend was a nurse on the unit that my mom was going to be in, on the COVID unit there, and that she would contact her. And that was a godsend for us. That it was like an angel on earth, because we had a contact and we had somebody who knew us, at least knew the story of my mom. And so she was beautiful, and we were so grateful, and we still are so grateful. All of the nurses there were wonderful, but overstressed, because that was the point when everything exploded in the nursing home and a lot of people got infected. After months and months of them working so hard as staff to keep this at bay. So anyway, it was about 10 more days of being with her in spirit. We did get a couple video calls with her, very short, and she was obviously not very responsive, but we were able to say what we wanted to say to some degree. And I was able to write down in the language using meditation, like I had worked out with my mom the last time I saw her in person. And that was our code throughout the whole thing. We're meditating with you. We're seeing you in meditation. So I gave the nurse a writing of our names to repeat, and that we were seeing her in meditation and all the important things. And so fortunately she kept that, and she would read it to my mom. And what happened during those few days, up and down, stress, a whole bunch of emotions, but a beautiful thing was happening. And that was that I was in meditation with her, and I did see her, and I did feel her. And my sisters were having their own experiences. Of course, we couldn't be together either because of COVID. And this was coming right up onto Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that's when everything really got bad around here again. And the chaos, people wanting to have Thanksgiving and Christmas, and people trying to quarantine. So all of those emotions were going on. And during this, my mom came to me. I would just be, we mostly just sat vigil, and I was mostly in meditation with her. And then sometimes I would get up and say I was going to go, run an errand or do something. And then I'd have to like sit right back down because suddenly she was with me. And it really was, there was so much beauty in it. She visited me and she took me to all of her, well, at least several, I think all of the places that she had lived in her life. And she took me through her childhood home, which I had some memory of from when I was younger and my grandparents living there, but I got to see it as it was when she was a child. And we went through every single room, and we went down in the basement where her dad, my grandpa, used to do woodworking. And she showed me her going down there with him throughout the different times of her life and talking with her dad. And she showed me her college life and being with her college friends. And it was so vivid and such a cool experience. And then she showed me her first job, her first house, everything, and back to the house I grew up in, and how it looked when they moved in before I was born. And it was just this incredible journey that she took me on. And I was right there with her. And I really believe that is something that someone does, their souls do as they cross over. And here a year ago, I had been holding my dad and helping him cross over from this side. And now, for the first time, I was experiencing the crossing with my mom from the other side. And I have to say that even with all the pain that still haunts me at times, that is one of the most beautiful experiences that I could have ever been gifted. We went together. I started to see people visiting her. So I saw all her relatives, which of course were my relatives, my great uncles and grandparents, people that I, was just had vivid memories of and was excited to see. And then people I kind of almost had to be reintroduced to, all coming into that room with her. She was not alone. She was definitely not alone. And we did some energy work helping her to release. My dad was there with her. And then there were so many other things, and we don't need to take all of the time with it, but then as it got closer, I started to see her which is actually in the work I do, in the conscious meditations I teach, it's the crystal canyon frequency. And there was a party. And at first I just saw the party, like everybody was waiting for her to show up. And she would stop in at it at this point when she was still transitioning. And then I realized it was in the Crystal Canyon. At one point, my nephew, who died when he was a baby years ago, so her grandson, my mom was on the other side, and I was watching her see all these people. And she saw Daniel, her grandson, across the room. And he showed himself in that moment as he would have looked at the age he would be here on earth now. And she was so happy to see him. It was so beautiful. It was really beautiful to watch that. And this is all woven into life here, trying to grieve away from someone, being in transition, but not being there, which people have all experienced, being in COVID and all through this. And then it was almost 2 weeks, and there was a chance that if she made it to 2 weeks, that she wouldn't be contagious if they found her not to be contagious anymore, because she really wasn't getting too bad of symptoms. She wasn't getting sicker in the symptoms that people are looking for, right? She was just not eating and going deeper and deeper in and really, really tired. And I think her throat, well, we don't really know what she had because she couldn't communicate. But anyway, it reached a point where there was a part of me going, wait, is she going to make it through this? Are we going to, I know she's going to die at some point, but are we going to be with her? And so that hope came back in for a little bit, and uncertainty. But then I woke up one morning, and that was the morning I felt like, okay, yes, she's going to cross. And a little bit later, I got a text from the nurse, and she said, it's getting close. And that's when I was, I think that maybe that was when I was like, okay, but then I looked down a little bit later, and I saw it's time, it's happening. And it was just enough time for me to get a text out to my sisters and then go into meditation so that we could all be with her from the other side as she crossed over into the spirit world. So I know I cried a lot, but I wanted to share that part of the story because, and then I want to talk about the grief, because that grief in COVID is a whole other thing that's going on. But I know that not everyone has the mindset or feels that they can connect in that way. And so I know that won't be everyone's experience who had a loved one die of COVID. But I was thinking that maybe in sharing that, there would be some peace in having me, for people who experienced the loss of someone with COVID and couldn't be there, maybe there would be some peace in seeing what I saw with my mom and what my sisters saw, because maybe it would help you to trust or feel or know that they really weren't alone at any point during that, and that they can see us, and so they know that we want to be with them. At least that's my belief and my experience. So I thought that sharing that could be helpful for people. That it was why I wanted to share that part with you. And we're going to go for a break now. And when we get back, I want to talk about the grief, the experience of grief during COVID, and the experience we're all having. We'll be right back.
Solivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing is pleased to announce its latest charitable partner, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We ask you to join us in supporting this national treasure of memories and truth to stay alive for generations to come.
Creating this museum gives us a chance to make manifest the dreams of many generations. We call the lost dream back.
This is a milestone moment not only for the Smithsonian, but for the United States.
The goal of the museum is to make America better. Provide opportunities for us to be made better by the past, and for us to move towards a future where race will always matter. They will find that those ideals are only met through sacrifice and struggle and a belief in a better day.
This place is more than a building. It is a dream come true.
History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived.
And by knowing this other story, we better understand ourselves and each other. I, too, am American.
We ask you to join us in supporting this national treasure of memories and truth to stay alive for generations to come.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Now this part of it will be a little bit easier for me, I think. Thank you for holding space for me to share that with you, and for honoring my my vulnerability, I suppose. I do try to be authentic in every moment, and I hope that that is how you received it, and that it did bring some understanding for others. But let's move on. What I want to talk about now is what happened after my mom died, because, and this is something that even more people are experiencing probably, because so many people have died during this time, not even because of COVID, but under these circumstances where it changes a lot of how we grieve as a community with each other, as loved ones, how we support each other. And one of the things is we have not done a service yet. We scheduled it for June, thinking that it would be clear by June, but it's going to be in August now. And so there's this uncertainty. And I know some people are having funerals and some people are doing something small and then later, but a lot of people are holding off. And without that ritual of some sort, that coming together, that support, it leaves people in limbo in the grieving process a little bit. And another thing that I noticed is that I didn't know how to be supported, and people said that they didn't know how to support us. So I guess I wanted to take a minute for those of us who have someone we care about who loses a loved one during this time, whether it's through COVID or something else, who aren't going to do the traditional funerals or can't for quarantine reasons. Here's some of the things that helped me. I'm going to start with some of the things that we did that were helpful, that we found were helpful. For me, talking about it, sharing pictures and talking about my mom, memories, that's something that we usually do right after someone dies. And that was a big emptiness at first. But then some people did pick up on it, and I had a couple. One of the things that was so comforting was when one of my friends had remembered that my mom had Marco Polo'd her once a few years ago, and she was trying to search for the video. And when she asked me how to do it, then I remembered we had a whole bunch of my mom's Marco Polos and my dad's. And so looking and finding those was such a gift, and sharing back and forth. Other friends started sending pictures of when we were young, and even just memories of our childhood together was so helpful to just be able to be in that space. My sister Doreen had the wherewithal to create a memorial group on Facebook. It's private for people that knew my mom or knew us, that we wanted to invite into it. There's a lot of people in there. But the beautiful thing about that was then we had a place to share. We could share pictures and memories, and people would respond to us, and they would share memories, and we would get to hear that. So creating that was incredible for us, and I highly recommend it if you're in that situation, if you're a Facebook user. But finding some sort of venue where you can share with people is essential right now, I think. um, Finding ways to harness that into some sort of creativity. My sister, Doreen, again, she makes life albums, and she had for my parents made from their childhood. I got all the pictures together and did a book, one of the online books, to preserve everything, and then you could print it out. And so she was working on pictures, and she was very focused on finding pictures and sharing them, and working on creating books along with the Facebook group. My sister Julie's an artist, and she created, I don't know if I'm doing this good, but my mom loved angels, and so she painted one of these angels for my sister and I, so that we could have that as a memory from her. I'm a writer, so I was writing, and I did share with, I did kind of do what I did earlier a little bit. I think I actually did better earlier on. I must have been with my community of Consciously Awesome alumni, because that, to me, helping others is healing to me. One of the things, so going back there, now I want to kind of move on to helping people help others, right? Because like I said, nobody knew what to do for us, and we didn't know what to ask for. But some of the things that people did for us that were so helpful. So if you're in this situation, and I'm trying to remember that now every time when someone I know has a loved one who dies, even though we weren't all gathered together. A lot of times people bring meals, right? When someone dies, you bring meals to the house where you know the family's gathering, but our family wasn't gathering. We were in all different places. So I think people didn't know where to go or what to do, but some people did bring food to each of our houses, or my one sister and I lived close enough that if it was delivered to one, we could share with the other, because we did not want to cook. Yeah, we didn't have a group of people over, but when someone dropped a meal off, it was a godsend, because it had already been 10 days of not wanting to cook or eat, and to have just a meal prepared, not having to go out to the grocery store, any of that was such a gift. So I highly recommend figuring something out, if getting a meal to someone, even if they're not gathering. Flowers, we had asked for not to have, instead of flowers, we asked for donations to the nursing home, because at this point we were also grieving many of the residents, and we were feeling pain for the staff that we came to love, and what they were going through, trying to get through, because it, like I said, it got rough there after my mom got it. She was on the early end. It's clear, good now, and actually people are getting to see their families now. So that's good, exciting for them. But donations made to that that we had asked for the staff and residents there meant a lot to us as well. We also kind of put our time into taking care packages up to the staff that cared for her. That was one of the ways we helped to heal ourselves too. But the flowers, in the early days, a bouquet of flowers came from my friend, and it just sat on the table, and it was so comforting, because it's also surreal when you're not there with them. And it was just sort of an anchor into this world that, yes, this is happening, and you're loved, and you're moving through this, and it's okay to be gentle on yourself. So flowers did mean a lot to me. I mean, people did a lot of things, and I'm not going to name everything because I just can't. But I just wanted to give people ideas in case you want to help others through this time as well. Cards mean a lot, and some people gave gifts that were symbols of love or connection to spirit, or something that reminded them of my mom. And in fact, I even just got a gift recently from someone. She said, I got this a long time ago and I didn't get it to you, I'm so sorry, but we had just seen each other, and so she gave it to me. And it was perfect. I said, even months later, because it's not closure yet. So anytime I get a card, even now, months later, or someone recognizes it, it's comforting, because this has been extended in a way that isn't as usual. I mean, it would always be comforting, but it just means a lot. So if you know someone who lost a loved one and time passed and you didn't get to do anything for them yet, I say, if your heart says it, go ahead and do it for them, because in this time especially, it will still mean a lot to them. Somebody gave, a dear friend gave me, and her mom had recently died, and she gave me this shawl. It's called a sharing, no, a giving shawl, and it comes with this beautiful poem, and it's really about being wrapped in a hug. It is so soft, and it's designed to the whole packaging and the wording, and it comes with a book, a bookmark that has a poem about you being embraced and loved. It has pockets for your tissues, and it felt like such a beautiful hug. It was such a gift that that's what I gave my sisters for Christmas, because I just wanted a hug, and it was such a beautiful way to be hugged during a time that we couldn't get hugs. So I think that's kind of what I had in mind. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. Just use your heart if you do have someone you want to support. And if you are in the situation of the one grieving, just understand that maybe these suggestions would even be something you could ask for, because people kept asking, what can I do for you? And I didn't know. So maybe I could have said this would help, maybe, so maybe these ideas will help you as well if you're in the process of grieving. But we always have to grieve, and a death doesn't go away, even the way our society, it used to be in traditional communities. Usually you took a year that you were grieving, and those rituals were put in there to support people, because it takes time. We already had taken that out of most of the cultures, or reduced it. But now there's a sense of timelessness that is happening for the people, I believe, who are experiencing it. When you can get together with them, when things lift, make sure, I know you'll hug anyway, but give a hug, or my intention is to give a hug for the loss that they experienced, because it's still going to be there. Or if a memorial is months later or a year later, know that it's the first time they're doing it, so it's going to be raw. And just that's my intention, and I'm sharing from this side what I would like, and so I'm going to give in case that's something you want to do. But another thing I noticed, and I wanted to talk about the 5 stages of grief, and maybe how they vary during COVID time. And again, I'm only one person. I tune in, and I can feel a lot of the people around me, and I have experience with a lot of people sharing, but I'm only one perspective. So with all of this, take what feels right always, and leave what doesn't. But the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, and sadness or depression, and then acceptance. And they don't come in order. They can vary and move around, and they will last a long time. They can last a long time. You could go through one layer of it and experience it again. But just understanding that during this time, the surrealness of it and the intensity of it, that it may be prolonged for you, but it also might come out in different ways. Denial can take a lot of different forms, because there's like I wasn't seeing her anyway for that year. So it's like, well, your brain just is trying to figure out how to put it all together and process that. And I'm sure everyone has different ways that they experience that. And I experienced it during the process of those 10 days, when then the hope would come that then we'd get through this and I'd be with her at the end, or however that went. Anger was one that I really noticed. And I think that this was unique to COVID, and to this experience. And what I was feeling, and I'm weaving this in because I want to talk about the fact that we have a collective grief going on in our world. Even if you haven't lost a loved one during this time, you've lost normalcy, you've lost connection, some people have lost their job, their homes, going to school, your daily routine. And we are all one. That's what Consciously Awesome is all about. And why I'm here with the show is we are all one, and we all are connected. And when this many people are grieving death, grieving loss of any one of those things that we may have given up during this time, it's going to be felt. Like, we are feeling it. Most likely you are experiencing all of these things. So if you look at these 5 stages of grief, the denial, sometimes that comes in denial that COVID is real. It can come in denial. It comes in denial. Our brains can't fathom the number of people who have died in this way, alone and struggling through this period of time. And so the numbers get so big that they no longer are personal, because that's how we have to cope. That's a level of denial that we're probably all experiencing as we go through this, and it's normal. So maybe forgive yourself if you're experiencing that, and yet you want to be compassionate. You are still compassionate. It's just difficult to conceive of. Anger definitely was different for me this time. When I got off the phone, when the person called to tell me that my mom had COVID, after I was bawling on the phone and gathering myself together to call my sisters and tell them, I looked down at my phone, and there was a Facebook post on the screen from somebody that I care about. And it was a post about, it was like a meme about, kind of like, F this, everybody get together for Thanksgiving anyway. It's not what it said. That's what I heard. And the rage in me was so strong. And luckily it raised up so quickly. And I knew to it was just a flash, and I went and I unfollowed that person for a while because I knew that I cared about that person, and I knew that we were in two different worlds in that moment, and it was not personal. Nobody even knew, but that I wanted to live the rest of my life being able to care about that person and be friendly and comfortable with them, and that in order to do that, I had to not put myself in a position of seeing different opinions and other people's anger and pain being presented in a different way. So protecting myself in that, but also the rage and anger. I noticed a couple of weeks ago, so we're now a few months after my mom's death, and it culminated. I identified it when we realized we had to make the change in the date for my mom's memorial. And I just felt all this anger and rage, and yet it wasn't directed at my sisters or anyone, even they were the ones we were trying to navigate the decision through, but I couldn't even talk to them because I was so angry. And that's when at some point I just went to the computer and wrote down I just wrote, I'm angry because, I'm angry this, and I just made a whole list. And it wasn't at one person at all. There was no one person I was angry at. It was the situation, it was the life, it was all of these things. It was that I hadn't seen my sister yet, that I hadn't seen my son yet since the death of my mom because of COVID. It was, all these different things, and then I sent that to my sisters, and they said yes, that like it healed them to hear it because they felt all the same things, and then they added a couple other things. And I had noticed that I had been just getting angry like for a few weeks before that, just randomly and inappropriately, and luckily I wasn't doing anything with that anger, and I knew it wasn't attached, but it was the very reason that it was not going away, because I didn't have anything to attach it to. I guess it was just this generalized anger. And I think we all have that, whether we lost someone or not during this time, because this is not a fun situation in a lot of ways, even though metaphysically on a higher level, I can see where this whole situation could be leading to healing of the world and evolution of our humanity. I can see all that and still feel the mundane anger of the situation. So rage, if you're feeling a lot of anger right now, it may be part of the grieving as a collective, and finding a way to discharge that could be really helpful. Sadness rises up. Sometimes the sadness is for me, sometimes the sadness is for the world. We're still navigating this, but an awareness too that we are grieving as a collective, like the whole world of humanity is grieving right now on some level. And maybe we have been for decades in some sort of numbed, washed out, suppressed expression of grief at the way the world has been lately. I don't know, but we're definitely grieving now. So if you are not directly being affected by COVID through a death or a loss, but you're feeling denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance all at once, sometimes one, sometimes another, not through it all, any of those things, waves of sadness that you can't understand why, understand that we are, as a collective, humanity grieving. And each one of us who takes the time and the responsibility to notice that, to feel it, to experience it, to reach out for help, we support the collective, pouring love when we're feeling good into the collective, to all those people out there whose faces we don't even know who are experiencing this. I think that is maybe even the biggest message that I wanted to bring forth today. It just took me a long time to get here, but just to understand that we're all in this together, even though we feel so far apart at times right now. we are all in this together, and we are all mourning in some way, in some level. And perhaps applying that understanding to your daily life, to your relationships, will ease the pain and the struggle a little bit and help us move towards the healing. So thank you so much for letting me share in this way, for letting me babble, cry, whatever that was in the beginning, express myself in that way, and for holding space, because I can feel your love, and that allowed me to get through that. And this was probably healing for me. I'm sure it was healing for me. It always makes me feel good when I'm experiencing something, that if I can help others through that because of my experience. All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Brian Johnson for producing this show and creating Solivity platform in the first place, in the present, and for letting me be a part of this family. Thank you to all of you as you move through your day, and to everyone who has supported me personally during this time. And I hope to see you next week here. Next week, I will have Chantel Upson, who is also a conscious life coach, and she will be here to talk with me about conscious parenting and how and ideas and tips and struggles and stories about parenting from a space of higher consciousness. Have a beautiful week. Remember to check out all the other shows on Solivity, and don't forget to check out Higher Health Now, the new show here on Solivity TV, coming up on Thursday. Have a beautiful day, and thank you.